I just came across this thread on Reddit and it sounds so interesting. I haven't even started reading it yet. I literally just immediately turned on my camera. This is from the subreddit Ask Me Anything, and it says, I went to prison at 18, paroled at 50. Ask me anything. If you guys aren't familiar with AMA on Reddit, it's basically just like an open discussion. People are free to ask whatever questions they might have and OP responds. So OP says, I went to prison at 18 and served 32 years on a life sentence. I've been home for 5 years now. Life is good, better than I ever expected. I've got a solid career, a partner who supports me, and some plans for the future. Lately, I've been thinking about picking up a memoir I started while I was still inside. It's sitting in a plastic bin in my closet, and it's already been through 4 drafts. I haven't looked at it in a while, but the pull is getting stronger. I'm not planning on going into the gritty details of my crime, but I'm open to sharing most of the rest, just wondering if there's still a reason to tell that story, or if anyone would care to read it. And then before we get into the questions that people asked, they did post an update. They said there has been a lot of chatting about why I won't reveal specific details about the crime in an AMA, since the expectation is to ask anything. I'm okay with everyone asking, not offended in any way. However, I will not be sharing any specific details about the crime. I will answer whatever about my motivation, my responsibility, in short. I will answer the why, not the how. The reason is that there are other people affected by my actions, most notably the family and friends of the man that I killed. My book also does not contain details of the crime. This isn't a true crime episode. Again, thank you for the responses and questions. I appreciate the feedback and offers to read the book. Like I said in my stalker point of view video, I am not reading this to amplify the voices of this person who committed this crime. I just think this is really interesting, especially if they are going to go into more of like their motive, their responsibilities and stuff like that. I just thought it would be really interesting, so we're going to get into it. Someone said, thank you for sharing your experience. It's been very insightful. I have a few questions. 1. How was the prison staff? Were they helpful, understanding, resentful, violent, scared, angry? I assume this changes from person to person as well as from position to position. Are there any specific people from the staff or inmates that you built connections with? 2, you mentioned as a younger person you had to be part of prison politics. We haven't gotten to whatever questions they're referring to, but it's fine. Are guards/staff aware that you have to be part of some actions for your safety? Are they understanding at all or resentful all the same? Why was it easier to avoid prison politics as you got older? Were you left alone or did you learn to avoid people? 3, were you scared for your life at any point in prison? If so, how often and how close do you think you got? If not, what was the most dangerous thing you came across while inside? 4, you mentioned getting your parole was very difficult. Did you encounter any situation where you felt like people who didn't deserve it got out? Or people you felt definitely deserved to be out were denied their chances? And then OP responded and said, 1, most prison staff were indifferent. Some were helpful and good people. Some were vindictive, vicious, sadistic people. I had a solid relationship with a few guards, some of whom supported me getting out. Some sponsored groups I was a part of. I also had a few teachers that went above and beyond to help us. 2, in maximum security, level 4s, the cops are political also. In a lot of ways, they are complicit in how that mess keeps propagating. As a youngster, I was just at the mercy of the system. I was scared to buck the status quo. I'm a bigger guy, and I can fight, so I didn't get into a lot of shit, but still put in work, as they say. When I got older, after many trips to the hole and having learned to navigate the system, I was able to pick and choose when to buck. In 2012, at 43 years old, I chose to sit down in a full-on race riot. White people versus black people. I told my people that I was done, and fuck them if they don't like it. I was willing to fight to get my way. My luck held and nothing happened to me. I made it off the yard and onto a lower security place. That was a big turning point. After that, I was able to stay out of all of it. This would not have ended well on a max level 4 yard. This was a level 3. They would have sent shooters after me. 3, yes, many times. Most dangerous was fighting a group of a dozen or more during a riot, where it took live rounds to get it to stop. Someone close to me was shot. 4, that's a loaded question, but yeah. I saw people that I knew were full of shit get out. Some came right back, some managed to stay out, and the latter was true as well. When you spend every day, 365 days a year with people, and you go to groups with them, you see how they treat others, how they respond to frustration and anger-provoking situations. You really get to know them. Somebody said, my brother has been in and out of jail since he was 14, never making it as a free man for longer than a year or 2. In 2022, he got sentenced to 25 years, possible parole after 15. For the first time in his life, he's actually saying the right things, getting an education, and hoping to turn it around once he finally gets out. If he gets his first parole, he will be 42 on release. What advice would you give him? And what advice would you give me as someone who wants to help him when he's released? If he will need to work, then prepping for job interviews, resume writing, all that is super important, as is transportation to the interviews. He will need equal measures of patience and straight talk. Facts are, it's hard as fuck out here, and there is some drama happening in the country that may affect him. Number one tip, if he's still doing well inside, i.e. school, treatment, healthy habits, healthy friendships, and relationships, do not stop doing those things when he gets out. It is my assertion that it's harder to change your life on the inside environment, but very easy to backslide when out. There is no overpowering, in-your-face reason to keep at it. It's only you versus yourself. That, I feel like, is genuinely some of the best advice I've ever heard, because it's very, very, very true. It is so incredibly hard to change habits and do things differently than you normally do. Make actual, meaningful change in your life is really hard, but it's really easy to just stop. Okay, someone said there's been many advances when it comes to technology, healthcare, infrastructure, etc. in the 32 years you were incarcerated. What are some notable things that were drastically different, or new things that shocked you, or still do when released? Additionally, was it hard to adapt to a society that was 32 years ahead of what you were accustomed to? They said the biggest adjustment was dealing with how automated things are, or how much social media informs everyday life. I didn't have a crazy adjustment period to the level of tech out here. I got into tech as a front-end engineer and transitioned into more of a program management role. I took jobs in the prison that allowed me to work with computers and taught myself Visual Basic on standalone Windows PC. This gave me a foundation for being able to learn more robust coding and land a job. OP, just wanted to say based on your responses how well spoken you are. I have to say that you break all the stereotypes about people who have been to prison. We do a giant disservice not helping more inmates get to where you've gotten. If you could change one thing about prison that you think would help more people get to where you're at, what would it be? And by where you're at, I just mean educated, acquiring people skills, and being able to build a career. And congrats, sir, you're doing a bang-up job. OP said, education, therapy, job skills, addiction treatment, and solving the puzzle of how to return a sense of agency to people who have had all their agency taken as a result of incarceration. Example, there is a thing called cell extraction, where we would paper our cell windows so the cops couldn't see in. This constituted a security threat, since they were unable to visually count us. When we refused to come out, they would stack up 4 cops per inmate and bust in the door. We would be pepper sprayed, cuffed, hogtied, and drug out. The reasons for cell extracting were everything from not getting mail, packages, visits, phone calls, food, etc. We did this because we had no other recourse and we had no other way to feel heard. These are actions of people who have lost the belief that they can make decisions that impact their own lives. The magic will be figuring out how to get them to believe in themselves again. From your experience, what changes need to be made to move prison from punishment to rehabilitation? They said, oof, this is a big one. The US, among other nations, has a nearly universal model of corrections we call punitive. The theory is you punish people enough and they will change their ways. Among all the problems with this theory is the fact that this, if at all, only produces change in response to punishment, i.e. when the threat of punishment is removed, what motivation is there to maintain the change? A more utilitarian model would be restorative justice. The theory underlying this one is that it emphasizes the repairing of harm through an engaged and inclusive process that includes the victims, offenders, community members, law enforcement, and focuses on repair rather than punishment. An obvious question is, what motivates people to change in this latter system? Firstly, they are still incarcerated, so there's not a lack of punitive elements. Next, the restorative system would incentivize change and provide motivational rewards when change is maintained. Currently, the system is designed to only punish when unwanted behavior occurs. This is bad science, full stop. The apex of a restorative model is when the offenders can internalize the harm they have caused and be honestly accountable to their community, victims, and themselves. There's a focus on victims' experience in restorative justice that is not accounted for in our adversarial court system. I can go on, just please read more about it. The roadmap for this type of system already exists. New Zealand's youth offender system is a prime example, as is Norway, and even some scattered spots in the US. If you Google restorative justice programs, you can find a lot. A move to a restorative model is what I believe we need. And I agree 100% as somebody who's never been to prison. So this next question, it kind of implies an answer to another question that we haven't gotten to yet, but it's not hard to understand. This person said, you mentioned in a reply that you were prostituting and your crime was against a man who had picked you up. You also said in your OP that you have a partner. So I have a 2-part question. 1, are you gay? Which is just like insane. 2, what is prison like for a young gay man or young straight man with prostitution on his resume? I'm not asking for horror stories, just generally, how did you navigate it? I feel like there's a better way to like word that, but they said, my sexuality is complicated. I'm not gay, but I've also been with men and women. My partner is female and we are an amazing match. My life is where it is due to how awesome she is. I had to fight several times when people tried to take advantage of me inside. I definitely had a sensitivity to being called gay for a long time. Now I don't care. I've been able to come to a place of self-acceptance regarding my past and my sexuality. I think that's an amazing answer. Hope you don't mind if I ask 2 questions. 1, what's the public's biggest misconception about prison? And 2, how easy is it to keep your head down and not get involved in prison politics and trouble? They said, 1, that it is violent all the time, and 2, it's easier the older you get. When I went in, it was pretty much impossible to avoid. I got into a lot of the bullshit for the first dozen years and then spent the next decade digging myself out of the hole I put myself in. So many prisoners end up back in jail and can't break that cycle. I realized that you were very young when you were convicted, and maybe you made one bad choice or hadn't fully adopted the criminal life, but why do you think that you've been able to stay straight when so many others can't? Good question. I got sober for 1, and did some hard inside work to deal with some shit from my childhood. When it boils down though, it comes to making one good decision at a time. I am far from perfect, but I am a whole person now. I can accept my faults and strengths with usually a healthy outlook. I'm not sure if anyone's asked this yet, but did you get therapy inside? And if you did, was it helpful? Congrats on getting clean and staying clean. They said lots of therapy, the most powerful of which was a 2-year-long intensive group therapy program. Same 12 guys, same 2 doctors. All 12 of us are out, reintegrated and doing work to continue making amends. Can't even the slate, but that doesn't mean you don't do the work. That's amazing. That is amazing. Obviously this is different, but I did like an extensive outpatient program. And it was like a group program, and that shit changed my life. I can only imagine how powerful that is in prison. Just to hear that 12 people alone who were in the same group are all out now, that's amazing. What were the best and worst things in prison? In other words, what were parts of the day or events that you looked forward to the most, and parts of your day that you dreaded the most? There's a saying we had, the worst day outside beats the best day inside. I don't wholeheartedly buy this, but I say it here just for perspective. Things to look forward to: canteen, packages, food sales, sport championships, visits, yard, meals. Worst days: the night before going to yard when I knew shit was going to kick off. Diarrhea, sleeplessness, fear, all that. Still gives me chills. Someone said I'm a parole attorney. Welcome home. I don't think the details of the crime would be important to the story and may cause more harm to the next of kin. Your redemption story is what's interesting. And I agree. We got kind of a little idea of what happened, what their crime was, but I agree. I feel like somebody being able to be rehabilitated and have this redemption story, I think that's the part that is so fascinating. And they said, thank you, this is some confirmation bias here, but this is my view 100%. I also do respect that they don't want to speak about the crime because there are people who are still affected by it. 32 is a long one. Are you institutionalized? And if you don't think you are, why not, and how do you manage? I have some institutionalization traits. Dr. Stephen Grinstead coined the term post-incarceration syndrome. I'm moderately uncomfortable in large crowds. I have a relatively high startle response to loud noises, and I am often hypervigilant when walking around the city. I also eat my food too fast. Honestly, I've never really thought about that, like the lasting effects of spending that much time in prison. Like when you get out, it's like things like that that you just don't even think about. Someone said, have you ever considered volunteering in a role where you teach today's youth how to stay straight? And they said, I volunteer in a few places, some of which involve working directly with at-risk youth. I think that's incredible. How did you cope with knowing you had a life sentence at only age 18? I can only imagine how hard that must have been. I mostly lived in denial, the type where it's absolute. I simply existed and went on day after day. One of the reasons I believe drama is so engaging in prison is as a means to focus on something else besides what the fuck is happening to you. Obviously, there are pros and cons with living in absolute denial, but I just feel like they have so much good advice in here, like simply existing day to day. I know for me, when I'm struggling, all I can do is focus on my day-to-day activities, even if it's hour by hour. I'm not sure if OP knew that it was temporary and that he would eventually get out, but for me, that's something I have to remind myself when I'm going through really hard times. These things are only temporary, and I just have to focus day to day. I'm also not trying to like relate to OP in a way where like we're actually relating. I'm just speaking like out loud from what I'm gathering from all of this. Do you actually care if the family forgives you or not? I don't blame them if they don't, but also it might have no bearing on your life. They said not caring is kind of strong. I'm a human. I do care. I just don't believe it's my place to ask or expect it. That, I think, in itself shows so much growth. Do you feel guilty or are you at peace with it? Fact, I am guilty. Also true, I've made peace with myself. I think that's all I'm gonna read for now. You guys, there are so many questions in this thread and they've done a great job at answering most of them. If you guys want me to come back to this and read more, I would be happy to. I think this is so fascinating. And it honestly is crazy to read about somebody's experience and seeing how much growth is possible. It's truly amazing. But I'll link this thread in the description if you guys are wanting to go see more. I don't know if you can still ask questions on this. I don't think it's archived, so I think you can still ask questions. Not sure if they're still answering, but whatever. I'll have it linked regardless if you guys want to go through, because there are so many that I did not read. But that is all I have for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really like reading these AMAs. I had never really done it before. Honestly, it was a subreddit I wasn't like super familiar with, but after the stalker POV one and this, I'm like, we're gonna have to get way more into this subreddit. This is really cool. But I'm gonna go. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.